Oh boy, things are getting out of control. Due to my lack of purchasing power at the moment, I'm really having to dig deep into the scrap pile. And things are starting to get heavy. I'm having to use some pretty thick materials. I'll show you, case in point. I got half inch by, I believe, 4.5 or 5 plate just to mount the mud flaps. Now this is going to reinforce my whole bumper, but holy moly, well, that's a bit much. But you know what? It's all right, because this is going to be a weak point if some little Ford Fiesta comes ripping around the corner, not paying attention. That should stop it. I mean, look at these frickin' things. This is ridiculous. I think these are just going to be my toe points. Actually, maybe I'll just put one in the center. Some farm implements have the real basic hitch on it, which is basically just you know, 2 pieces of flat bar with some 2x2 in the middle, and you throw a pin through there. So maybe I'll use this for my toe point and use that for towing around farm implements. So, I mean, this was getting a little too heavy right from the start with that, you know, all this 1/4 inch tubing that I'm using for my blocking here. You know, I didn't really need it to be 4 inches wide, but it's not too bad. I mean, it's a dually. It's an old Ford. And again, this is my personal truck. I'm not like I'm building this for some customer that has to be concerned about that. So this is going to be my truck for a long time, and it's going to be strong enough. It's going to be stout. So again, with this thick material, you know, these are my plates here for just another point for the bumper to fasten to. So I have a bolt coming through the center of these blocks to button down to the frame, but now I want something for the, you know, when I have it's going to be like torsion for when I have weight on the hitch or the trailer pushing the bumper into the truck. I want this to go in and give me that resistance there. So this is going to be where the rear pin point is going to be for the dump box, and I'm going to do something similar on the front blocks here down to the frame. That'll just sit underneath there, and there's not really going to be any teetering going on. The back of the dump box is only going to come to about here, but nonetheless, it's good to have that point in case something does happen that it isn't able to jump off. I'm actually going to have a fifth wheel mounted to this deck as well, so it's just good to have a bunch of extra securement there. So the only other thing I want to mention here is, you know, this is some of the really boring part of fabricating, but it's also some of the most important parts, is your you know, your grinding etiquette, your, what would you call this, not a weldment, but just oh shit, I can't even think of the proper name of it right now, but these you know, the plates like these or pieces like these, I really need to touch them up, do your due diligence on getting rid of all the burrs and rounding your corners really nicely. Make it symmetrical, make it look good. And you know, especially if you're working with somebody else, you know, I know guys that have got their hands cut because people didn't deburr, or they left a little bit of a, you know, some of their wire, you know, on a bit of a ugly looking weld. There was a bit of wire left over that didn't buzz off, and the guy cut his hand on it. And this is toxic stuff. You know, you don't want to be, you know, I've had some of that hard wire, a hot piece of hard wire come through my glove and penetrate my fingers on more than one occasion, and that is a gross mess of an infection. Let me tell you what, that's not something you want to have happen too terribly often, but it's going to happen if you're spending any time in this trade. It just happens. But yeah, just be really good about, you know, your not fucking weldments. I can't think of the name. I'll think of the name later. But just be really good about doing all your beveling, grinding. For, you know, as far as like taking welds, like I ground some of my welds down just because this needs to be as flat as possible here. But typically, you don't need to be touching up your welds. I guess on handrails, I built quite a few handrails, and in you know, if you're building handrail out of pipe, you're gonna be taking all your welds down and making it perfectly smooth with sanding discs and whatnot. But for this, just do a good job. You know, you can always grind them back out and throw a fresh one down. Downhand welds. This is a non-critical area, and this is a perfect example of where, you know, a lot of production shops will end up doing downhand welds. This here is a bit of an ugly weld. This is what I call hillbilly TIG. That's maybe for another video. This is a downhand weld just to secure these caps on. It don't need great penetration. Doesn't matter if I get inclusions or porosity. It's really not a big deal, and I usually don't. I've actually done downhand lots on gauge metal, like, you know, pretty heavy gauge metal, like 10 gauge or so. But yeah, I do lots of downhand working on stuff like containers for what was I doing? Like, you know, some hydraulic tanks and rig catch basins and whatnot for environmental hookups, and everything needs to be leak tested. And I've done miles of downhand, and it's very rare that I get any sort of pinholes or any problems with my welds whatsoever. So it's just you know, it's one of those unspoken parts of the trade that you know, you get some people telling you can't do it, and, you know, giving you a hard time about it. It happens. It's what's going on. It's just the fact of the matter.